To thank President Rubenzoll for giving me the honor of introducing your 1999 commencement speaker, Martín Espada. As an academic and a teacher, I've put on these strange clothes numerous times, and I've sat through a lot of commencement exercises, heard a lot of speeches, but I don't remember much of what anybody said. There were speeches by politicians, by CEOs of large corporations, by presidents and deans from other colleges and universities, by successful people from all over. And I'm sure some of them said interesting things, but none of them were poets. Some people have a lot to say, and they can't find the words. Others have a lot of fancy words and not much to say. So they give you complex, extravagant, difficult language to hide their lack of ideas. But as Pete Seeger, the American folk singer, said about Woody Guthrie, any damn fool can get complicated. It takes genius to attain simplicity. The problem is that most people who are actively thinking about words and language in rhetoric today are trying to sell you something or to confuse you. Their intent, in Espada's own words, is not to communicate, but to control. That's why I think you're an especially privileged audience tonight. Martín Espada, as a poet, knows the power of language, but he also has a lot to say about the issues and realities of real people. And he uses his creative craftsmanship to tell the stories for the people who can't find the words. And he does it in poem after poem with humor and simplicity. I don't know what he's going to say to you today, and neither do the people who are standing behind me on this stage, which is probably making some of them a little nervous. But I can tell you some of the things he's done and some of the people that his works describe. Let me give you his own rather strange idea of a resume. He was a janitor at Sears. He was a bindery worker at a printing plant. He was a gas station attendant. He was a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman. He was a pizza cook, a telephone solicitor, a car washer for a factory showroom, a bouncer in a bar, a caretaker in a primate laboratory, a night desk clerk, a radio journalist in Nicaragua, and the list goes on. He's also obviously done some other different sorts of things. He has a law degree from Northeastern University Law School in Boston. He's practiced bilingual educational law for a group called META, Multicultural Education Training and Advocacy Incorporated. He supervised at a clinic, Su Clínica Legal, which is a program for low-income Spanish-speaking tenants in Chelsea, Massachusetts. And he's published 5 books of poetry, although that number keeps going up as I talk to him. He's got another one coming out next year. He's written a book of essays. He's edited 2 anthologies of Latino poetry. He's won an American Book Award. He's received fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And he's now an associate professor of English at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. But beyond all these personal and professional achievements, what's most impressive is the poetry, because it's poetry filled with pictures of interesting people from all parts of the United States. From the images in his poems, we get pictures of people from the borders, on the fringes, on the outside, the outcasts of today's society. There's, for example, Federico, the rebellious young migrant farm worker boy who's poisoned by pesticides. There's Jorge, the invisible janitor who finally quits. There's Hector, who walked across Guatemala to escape the military in El Salvador. There's Tony, who's lost in the darkness of white faces and seeks the comfort of a bodega. Espada's people range from another nameless prostitute to a constipated high school principal. Like all Latinos, his work and life straddles two worlds, Puerto Rico and the United States, two cultures, two languages, the professional class and the working class. And I think the strength of his poetry lies in that bicultural, bilingual experience, that dual perspective which he is so proud of. The African-American poet Amiri Baraka, who used to be Leroy Jones, and some of you might remember as the strange homeless man in the movie Bulworth running around saying, "You got to be a ghost, you got to be a ghost." Baraka said, "The greatness of Espada's art, like all great art, is that it gives dignity to the insulted and the injured of the earth." I don't know what he's going to say to you today, but I am absolutely certain that you will remember it. So please welcome with me poet Martín Espada.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. To the families, friends, teachers, trustees, students, and graduates, welcome. Bienvenidos a todos. I am here to share the joy of this moment with you and also to talk to you about the future. And since I'm a poet, I'll read you a few poems too. Now, I could stand here and talk to you about myself for 15 minutes. I know that some commencement speakers do that, telling you that they started out from humble beginnings and if they could do it, you can do it, etc., blah, 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 blah. And it's true. I grew up Puerto Rican in the projects of Brooklyn. I was on welfare briefly. I wandered in and out of school from job to job. I really did sell encyclopedias door to door. I really was a bouncer in a bar. I really was a caretaker in a primate lab. I'm the only poet you'll ever meet who has been bitten by a monkey. Now, I was not a good student. In fact, I once failed English in the 8th grade. Yet, here I am, an associate professor of English. But I won't tell you the story of my life because I want to talk about you. We are here to celebrate the achievement of you graduates. Congratulations. Felicidades. To the class of 1999, thank you. Thank you for overcoming the countless obstacles you have overcome just to be here. Thank you for working at your job, working at home, and amazingly, working at school too. Thank you for taking on all the backache and all the eye strain now, so that your children won't have the same backache and eye strain in the future. Thank you for proving that there are alternatives to prison or the life of the streets. Thank you for not giving in to the temptation of self-destruction. Thank you for refusing to be a stereotype or a statistic. Thank you. You deserve thanks for the small miracle of being here today. You are living proof that there are people in the city of Hartford who read and write and think. Now that's a story we don't see on the TV news. Instead, we see the arraignment in the courtroom, the bloodstained sidewalk, the newscaster talking about gangs, drugs, jail. It's all there, to be sure, but there is so much more. You are so much more. You deserve thanks for demonstrating that you are more than a pair of hands to clean up the mess left behind by others. You have hands, and they work, sometimes clean up. But you have a mind, and that mind works too. What happens if you have a good mind, but you're only seen for what your hands can clean up? This is what I call the problem of the thinking janitor. This is a problem that affects whole communities, African American, Latino, poor white. I'm going to read a poem now about a thinking janitor. His name was Jorge. He was an immigrant from Honduras, a person of intelligence, pride, and dignity like you, who worked at a church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But to the people he worked for, he was a pair of hands, an extension of his mop, invisible. I only wish that Jorge had the chance to go to school, to get the diploma you will get today, to prove them all wrong. In this poem, I speak in the voice of Jorge because I have been a thinking janitor too in my life. The poem is called Jorge the Church Janitor Finally Quits. No one asks where I am from. I must be from the country of janitors. I have always mopped this floor. Honduras, you are a squatter's camp outside the city of their understanding. No one can speak my name. I host a fiesta of the bathroom, stirring the toilet like a punch bowl. The Spanish music of my name is lost when the guests complain about toilet paper. What they say must be true. I am smart, but I have a bad attitude. No one knows that I quit tonight. Maybe the mop will push on without me, sniffing along the floor like a crazy squid with stringy gray tentacles. They will call it Jorge. Some of you will go on to a career in nursing or other fields. Some of you will go on to four-year schools, such as Central Connecticut State University. Either way, you are in a position to give something back to the community. This community needs nurses. This community needs teachers. This community needs counselors. This community needs activists. This community needs poets, too. There is another reason why this degree is so important. You are building a future, not only for yourselves, but for the people who will live in that future, your children. The best gift you could give your children is a commitment to education, yours and theirs. School is much easier for the children of educated parents, parents who can help with the homework, who can teach good study habits, who can better understand the school system, and who can make demands to improve their children's education. Of course, when you leave here for work or school or both, don't stop reading, writing, and thinking for your sake, but for the sake of your families too. The African-American writer James Baldwin spoke of books as a kind of strange food. We all want to be sitting at that table. There comes a time in all of our lives when we realize what our children truly mean to us, when we imagine the people they can truly become with our help. When my own son Clemente was 6 weeks old, he became sick with a condition called RSV, a virus that causes pneumonia and sometimes heart failure in infants. My wife Catherine and I moved into the hospital with Clemente. His name, by the way, means merciful in Spanish. This is a poem about our gratitude for Clemente, for the blessing of his survival. The end of this poem is a prayer for what he will become, for his future, and for the future of all of our children, which we will make possible. The poem is called Because Clemente Means Merciful. For Clemente, Gilbert Espada, February 1992. At 3 a.m., we watched the emergency room doctor press a thumb against your cheekbone to bleach your eye with light. The spinal fluid was clear, drained from the hole in your back, but the x-ray film grew a stain on the lung, explained the seizing cough, the wailing heat of fever. Pneumonia at the age of 6 weeks, a bedside vigil. Your mother slept beside you, the stitches of birth still burning. When I asked, will he be okay? No one would answer, yes. I closed my eyes and dreamed my father dead, naked on a steel table as I turned away. In the dream, when I looked again, my father had become my son. So the hospital kept us. The oxygen mask, a frayed wire taped to your toe for reading the blood, the medication forgotten from shift to shift, a doctor bickering with radiology over the film, the bald girl with a cancerous rib removed, the pediatrician who never called, the yawning intern, the hospital roommate's father from Guatemala, ignored by the doctors as if he had picked their morning coffee, the check marks and initials at 5 a.m., the pages of forms flipping like a deck of cards, record keeping for the records office, the lawyers, and the morgue. One day, while the laundry in the basement hissed white sheets and sheets of paper documented dwindling breath, you spat mucus, gulped air, and lived. We listened to the bassoon of your lungs, the cadenza of the next century resonate. The Guatemalan father did not need a stethoscope to hear the breathing, and he grinned. I grinned too. And because Clemente means merciful, stood beside the Guatemalteco, repeating in Spanish everything that was not said to him. I know someday you'll stand beside the Guatemalan fathers. Speak in the tongue of all the shunned faces. Breathe in a music we have never heard, and live by the meaning of your name. Now, you have already done what some people think is impossible. You have changed your own lives for the better. If you have done the impossible once, then why not do the impossible again? Why not change this country? Why not a better world? Why not justice? If you apply your intelligence, your courage, your skills, your imagination, your sense of right and wrong, you can help to make justice a reality for yourselves and for the next generation. The third and last poem I will read is based on a very simple idea. What if this were the year that justice is finally done in this country? What if this were the year? The meek shall inherit. Now. Okay, I know that change does not happen overnight. I also know that no change for the good ever happens without being imagined first, even if at the time we imagine that great change it seems impossible, hopeless, because history teaches us otherwise and teaches us too that we are the ones who make it happen. All we have to do is look at the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s to see that. Imagine a country where no one is evicted because of poverty, a country without police brutality, a country where immigrants are welcome, a country where welfare mothers are truly helped and not condemned, a country where everyone is paid a decent wage, a country where our taxes are not used to pay for weapons that kill people in foreign lands. I can't imagine this future alone. So I ask you to imagine with me. This poem is called Imagine the Angels of Bread, and I'll finish with this poem about hope. This is the year that squatters evict landlords, gazing like admirals from the rail of the roof deck or levitating hands in praise of steam in the shower. This is the year the shawled refugees deport judges who stare at the floor and their swollen feet as files a stamp with their destination. This is the year the police revolvers stove hot blister the fingers of raging cops and nightsticks splinter in their palms. This is the year that dark-skinned men lynched a century ago returned to sip coffee quietly with the apologizing descendants of their executioners. This is the year that those who swim the borders undertow and shiver in boxcars are greeted with trumpets and drums at the first railroad crossing on the other side. This is the year that the hands pulling tomatoes from the vine uproot the deed to the earth that sprouts the vine, the hands canning tomatoes, a name in the will that owns the bedlam of the cannery. This is the year that the eyes, stinging from the poison that purifies toilets, awaken at last to the sight of a rooster-loud hillside pilgrimage of immigrant birth. This is the year that cockroaches become extinct, that no doctor finds a roach embedded in the ear of an infant. This is the year that the food stamps of adolescent mothers are auctioned like gold doubloons, and no coin is given to buy machetes for the next bouquet of severed heads in coffee plantation country. If the abolition of slave manacles began as a vision of hands without manacles, then this is the year. If the shutdown of extermination camps began as imagination of a land without barbed wire or the crematorium, then this is the year. If every rebellion begins with the idea that conquerors on horseback are not many-legged gods, that they too drown if plunged in the river, then this is the year. So may every humiliated mouth, teeth like desecrated headstones, fill with the angels of bread. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Congratulations.